You've landed on the brutal truth that no one wants to say out loud. That moment when you finally realize that the people around you, the ones you thought would celebrate your rise, are actually the ones quietly sabotaging it. You know that feeling, right? You're at dinner with friends, or maybe you're scrolling through social media, and you see someone crushing it, someone moving up in the world, building something real, and there's this voice in your head that whispers, "Why not me?" But then you look around at your circle, the people you trust, the ones who know you best, and you notice something strange. They're not exactly cheering you on. In fact, when you talk about your goals, your dreams, that business you want to start or that promotion you're chasing, you see it in their eyes, that flash of something you can't quite name. It's not support, it's not enthusiasm, it's something darker. Maybe they change the subject. Maybe they laugh it off with a joke that stings more than it should. Maybe they ask you a question that sounds caring but feels like doubt wrapped in concern. Are you sure you're ready for that? Don't you think that's a bit risky? And you feel it. That small crack in your confidence. That moment where you start questioning yourself, not because you doubt your ability, but because the people closest to you just planted a seed of doubt so subtle you almost didn't notice. If you've ever felt that cold realization that the people you care about don't actually want to see you win, if you've ever sensed that invisible resistance every time you try to level up, if you're tired of dimming your light to make others comfortable, then stay right here, because what I'm about to show you will change the entire way you navigate your rise to the top. This isn't about becoming cold or cutting everyone off. This is about understanding the one law of social hierarchy that will save you years of wasted energy and broken expectations. Here's the thing that no one tells you about climbing the social ladder. The higher you go, the lonelier it gets. And it's not because you're changing or becoming arrogant or losing touch with your roots. It's because human beings are wired with a primal mechanism that makes them perceive your success as their loss. This isn't modern psychology. This is ancient survival programming embedded deep in our DNA. When you were living in a tribe 10,000 years ago, resources were scarce. Status meant access to food, mates, protection, safety. If someone in your tribe started rising above the rest, gaining more respect, more influence, more power, your brain didn't see that as inspiration. Your brain saw that as a threat to your own survival. And that wiring, that ancient system, is still running in the background of every single person you know today. They don't consciously think, "I need to bring this person down," but their subconscious does the job for them. It shows up as skepticism disguised as care. It shows up as jokes that cut just a little too deep. It shows up as silence when you need encouragement and noise when you need focus. The people who are stuck where they are cannot emotionally tolerate watching you break free, because your freedom is a mirror reflecting their stagnation, and most people would rather pull you back down than face that reflection. Now let me be very clear about what we're dealing with here. The resistance you feel isn't always loud and obvious. It's rarely someone standing up and saying, "I don't want you to succeed." It's far more insidious than that. It's the friend who always has a story about someone who tried what you're trying and failed miserably. It's the family member who constantly reminds you of your past mistakes whenever you talk about your future goals. It's the colleague who never quite celebrates your wins, but always has time to point out what you could have done better. These are the people who claim they love you, who say they want the best for you, but their actions tell a different story. And here's the part that hurts the most. They're not lying when they say they care. They genuinely believe they're protecting you, guiding you, keeping you grounded. But what they're really doing is protecting themselves from the discomfort of watching you outgrow the version of you that made them feel safe. Because when you were small, when you were struggling just like them, they had companionship in their mediocrity. But now that you're rising, now that you're refusing to settle, you've become a living reminder of everything they're too afraid to pursue. And the human ego cannot handle that level of confrontation without fighting back. Let me paint you a picture of how this plays out in real life. Imagine you've been working at the same company for years, putting in the hours, building your skills, and finally you get the opportunity you've been waiting for, a promotion, a leadership role, a chance to step into real authority. You're excited, you've earned this, and you can't wait to share the news with your work friends, the people you've been grinding with, complaining about management with, bonding over shared frustrations. So you tell them, and instead of genuine happiness, you get a forced smile and a comment like, "Wow, must be nice. I guess you knew the right people." Or they say, "Well, I hope the extra stress is worth it. Leadership positions aren't all they're cracked up to be." And just like that, your moment of pride is tainted. You walk away feeling like maybe you should downplay it. Maybe you should feel guilty for moving up while they stay where they are. But here's what's really happening in that moment. You didn't do anything wrong. They're not mad at you. They're mad at themselves. Your promotion isn't a personal attack on them, but their brain interprets it that way because you just disrupted the social equilibrium. You were supposed to stay at their level, keep complaining together, keep dreaming together without actually doing anything about it. But you broke the unspoken contract of mediocrity, and now they have to reconcile with the fact that maybe, just maybe, they could have done the same if they had put in the work. And that realization is unbearable. So instead of facing it, they project it onto you as resentment disguised as concern. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself right now. How many times have you shrunk yourself to make someone else comfortable? How many times have you downplayed your success, hidden your ambitions, pretended you weren't as capable as you actually are, just so the people around you wouldn't feel threatened? How many times have you stayed quiet about your goals because you knew the moment you spoke them out loud, someone in your circle would find a reason to tell you why it won't work? If this has happened to you, if you've ever felt the weight of other people's limitations pressing down on your potential, I want you to leave a comment right now and just write, "I've dimmed my light." That's it. You don't need to explain the situation. You don't need to tell me who made you feel that way. Just write, "I've dimmed my light." Because here's what happens when you do that. You realize you're not alone. You see hundreds, maybe thousands of other people who have done the exact same thing, who have made themselves smaller to fit into spaces that were never big enough for them in the first place. And suddenly, that guilt you've been carrying, that feeling like maybe you're the problem for wanting more, it starts to dissolve. Because you understand that this isn't a flaw in you. This is a pattern that was taught to you by a world that benefits from keeping you small. So go ahead, write it in the comments. "I've dimmed my light," and let that be the last time you apologize for shining. Let your comment be a declaration that you're done playing small for people who are too scared to play big. Now here's where it gets even more layered. The people who resist your rise the most are often the ones who have known you the longest. Your childhood friends, your family, the people who remember you when you were broke, lost, struggling, trying to figure life out. And there's a psychological reason for this. These people have a fixed identity of who you are in their minds, and that identity serves a function for them. It keeps their world predictable, stable, manageable. When you start changing, when you start becoming someone they don't recognize, it creates cognitive dissonance in their brains. They can't reconcile the new you with the old you, and instead of updating their perception, they try to force you back into the box they built for you. You'll hear things like, "You've changed. You're not the same person anymore. Remember where you came from." And those phrases sound like they're about keeping you humble, but what they're really about is keeping you controllable. Because the version of you that stays the same is the version they understand, the version that doesn't challenge them to grow, the version that doesn't make them question their own choices. But the version of you that evolves, that breaks patterns, that refuses to be defined by your past, that version is dangerous to their comfort. And most people will choose their comfort over your growth every single time. So, what do you do? How do you navigate this without becoming bitter, without cutting everyone off, without turning into some isolated, paranoid version of yourself? Here's the first thing you need to understand. You stop expecting support from people who are not on your level or moving in your direction. This is not about arrogance. This is about realism. If someone is not actively working on themselves, not pursuing their own growth, not challenging their own limitations, they do not have the mental or emotional bandwidth to support your rise. It's not that they're bad people. It's that they're operating from a completely different frequency. You're trying to build an empire, and they're trying to survive the week. You're focused on legacy, and they're focused on fitting in. You cannot expect someone who is afraid of their own potential to celebrate yours. It's like asking a person who's never left their hometown to give you advice on traveling the world. They might have opinions, but those opinions are based on fear and inexperience, not wisdom. So, instead of seeking validation from people who can't give it, you redirect that energy inward. You become your own biggest supporter. You validate your own progress. You celebrate your own wins, even the small ones, especially the small ones, because you understand that waiting for external applause is a trap that keeps you dependent on the approval of people who secretly want you to fail. And here's the thing that shifts everything. When you stop needing support, you stop being affected by resistance. When you internalize the belief that your rise is inevitable regardless of who's cheering or who's doubting, you operate from a place of unshakable certainty. People feel that energy. They sense that you're no longer asking for permission, no longer seeking reassurance, no longer waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to be great. And that's when the dynamic changes. Some people will fall away naturally because they can't keep up with your pace, and that's fine. Let them go. Others will adjust, not because they suddenly became supportive, but because they realize their resistance has no effect on you anymore. And a rare few, the ones worth keeping, will be inspired by your example and start working on themselves. But none of that matters if you're still emotionally attached to being liked, being understood, being validated by people who are committed to staying exactly where they are. Let me give you a real scenario to make this tangible. Let's say you decide to start a business. You've been working your corporate job for years, playing it safe, doing what you're supposed to do, and one day you wake up and realize you're tired of building someone else's dream. So you start working on your own thing, on the side. You're putting in the hours after work, sacrificing your weekends, learning skills you've never had before, investing money you don't have a lot of into something you believe in. And you're excited, you're scared, but you're committed. So you share this with your close circle, thinking they'll be proud of you, thinking they'll support you. But instead, you get hit with a barrage of doubt. What if it doesn't work? Most businesses fail in the first year. Do you really think you can compete in that market? Why would you risk your stable job for something so uncertain? And each question lands like a punch to your confidence, not because they're valid concerns, but because they're coming from people you trust. But here's what you need to see clearly. Those questions aren't about you. They're about them. They're projecting their own fear of failure onto your decision. They're not saying you can't do it. They're saying they couldn't do it, and they need you to stay where you are so they don't have to confront their own lack of courage. So what do you do in that moment? You smile, you thank them for their input, and you keep moving. You don't argue, you don't defend, you don't try to convince them. You simply detach from the need for their approval and stay locked on your vision. Because the truth is, the people who matter will show up when you succeed, and the people who don't, well, they were never really on your team to begin with. Now let's go deeper into the mechanics of social hierarchy and why this pattern is so predictable. Every social group operates on an invisible structure of status and value. At the top, you have the people who are respected, admired, influential, the ones whose opinions matter, whose presence commands attention. At the bottom, you have the people who are overlooked, underestimated, sometimes even ridiculed. And in the middle, you have the masses, the people who are comfortable, invisible, neither rising nor falling, just existing. Most people spend their entire lives in the middle, not because they lack potential, but because staying in the middle is safe. It requires no risk, no confrontation, no vulnerability. But the moment you decide to climb, the moment you start making moves that separate you from the pack, you become a target. Not because people hate you, but because you're disrupting the stability of the group. You're proving that movement is possible, and that terrifies people who have convinced themselves that staying stuck is the only option. So they'll do everything in their power to pull you back, not through force, but through subtle psychological warfare. They'll question your decisions. They'll remind you of your failures. They'll compare you to others who tried and didn't make it. They'll make you feel guilty for wanting more. And if you're not mentally fortified, if you don't understand what's happening, you'll internalize their doubt and sabotage yourself before you even get started. But here's the beautiful paradox. The resistance you face is proof that you're on the right path. If no one is uncomfortable with your growth, you're not growing enough. If everyone is supportive and encouraging, you're probably not doing anything that challenges the status quo. Real transformation, real ascension, real power always comes with opposition. And the people who make it to the top are not the ones who avoid resistance. They're the ones who expect it, embrace it, and use it as fuel. Every doubt thrown at you is an opportunity to prove them wrong. Every person who distances themselves from you is clearing space for better connections. Every moment of loneliness is teaching you self-reliance, which is the foundation of true power. You don't need a crowd cheering you on to be successful. You need one person who believes without question, and that person is you. When you trust yourself more than you trust the opinions of people who are afraid to bet on themselves, you become unstoppable. And that's when the magic happens. That's when you stop asking for support and start attracting it naturally. Because people are drawn to certainty, to confidence, to those who move with purpose, regardless of external validation. So here's your challenge for the next 7 days. I want you to take one action toward your goal every single day without telling anyone. Not your friends, not your family, not your partner, just you and your vision. Work in silence. Build in private. Let your results be the announcement, not your intentions. And pay attention to how it feels to move without needing approval, without seeking reassurance, without waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to go after what you want. Because what you'll discover is that the support you were searching for externally was always available internally. You just didn't know how to access it because you were too busy looking outside yourself for permission. This is the shift that separates people who talk about success from people who actually achieve it. This is the moment where you stop being a passenger in your own life and start being the driver. And when you operate from that place of sovereign confidence, when you move like someone who doesn't need anyone's blessing to become great, the world rearranges itself around you. Opportunities appear, the right people show up, doors open that you didn't even know existed, not because you got lucky, but because you finally stepped into the energy of someone who is unavailable for mediocrity. If you made it this far, it's because something in this message resonated with you on a level you can't ignore. And I know exactly what you're feeling right now. Part of you is relieved because finally someone is saying the truth you've always known, but were too afraid to admit. And part of you is anxious, wondering if you actually have what it takes to walk this path alone. Let me tell you something. You're not alone. There are thousands of people in this community who were exactly where you are right now. People who felt invisible, who dimmed their light to fit in, who were tired of being held back by the limitations of others. And today, they're different. Not because they became someone else, but because they stopped apologizing for their ambition. They stopped waiting for permission. They stopped letting other people's fear dictate their potential. And it started with one decision, the decision to move forward even when no one was watching, even when no one believed, even when every voice around them said it's not possible. Here on this channel, every single week, I bring you insights like this, strategies rooted in the harsh realities of social hierarchy, human nature, and the psychology of power. This isn't about becoming ruthless or cold. This is about understanding the game so you can play it with mastery. If that speaks to you, if you're done being a spectator in your own life and ready to claim the power that's always been yours, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss a single video, because every upload is another piece of the puzzle, another tool in your arsenal for rising without apology. And if this video helped you see things more clearly, if it gave you the permission you didn't know you needed to stop seeking support from people who can't give it, leave a like so more people who need this message can find it. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, you don't need anyone's support to become who you're meant to be. You just need to stop waiting for it.